Hello! Before we get into the books that I read in the month of February, there is a Sanderson-shaped elephant in the room that I need to address. Because if you've been around here for any length of time at all, you will know that I really love Brandon Sanderson's books. And that will become apparent by the end of this video, even if you skip this particular part and skip to the wrap up. So I guess spoilers for my book reading of the month. At the time that I am filming this, it is the 2nd of March, which means that it has been a little over 24 hours since Brandon Sanderson dropped a very specific bombshell on the fantasy community. And I'm not going to spoil it in case you have managed to avoid spoilers to this point. So if you have, press pause on this video, go and watch Sanderson's video from yesterday or whenever it was, the 1st of March, depending on when you're watching this particular video, and then come back because I don't want to spoil you if you haven't had that experience yet. Okay, go. Okay, so we're carrying on if you didn't go anywhere, and if you're back, then welcome. He wrote 5 extra books in lockdown, and 4 of them we are getting next year. And I am very excited. I am very, very excited. My mind is incredibly blown by this very exciting news, and I'm really looking forward to reading these books. I am going to be reading them immediately when they come out, and I just wanted to acknowledge this event because it feels like such a big deal to me as a Sanderson fan, and I'm sure to so many others who love Sanderson's books. 3 of them are going to be in the Cosmere, which is very exciting, and they're on completely new worlds, so we get to visit places in the Cosmere that we haven't been yet, which is very exciting. One of them is a completely new standalone book, which is also very exciting. So there's just a lot to be excited about here. And there's a lot going on in the world right now, and none of this solves any of that or diminishes any of that. But it also is really nice to have something exciting to look forward to, and it would feel weird for me to just continue with my channel as normal as though this huge thing didn't happen, particularly as Brandon Sanderson is my favourite author, and I am pretty vocal about that. All of my friends are constantly commenting on the fact that I'm mildly obsessed, so it would feel weird to not say anything, so I'm saying something. And now, 3.5 minutes into this video, I am going to move on to actually wrapping up what I read in the month of February. And as usual, I will go through the books that I read in the order that I read them. So the first book I read was I Love You So Mochi by Sarah Kuhn, which I listened to on audio via my library, I think, or it might have been Scribd, I can't remember. Anyway, this is a fun YA romance story, and it was a quick and easy read. Nothing really to kind of jump and scream about necessarily, but it was a nice easy thing for me to read, and I feel like I picked it up at the right time, so I really enjoyed myself. The next thing that I read was a buddy read with my friend Joanna from the channel Joanna Sosa, and that was The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, which is the 2nd book in the Live Ship Traders series. We are buddy reading this trilogy together. I read the Farseer trilogy for the first time last year. Joanna has read it previously, and I really enjoyed this. I always find it really difficult to talk about sequels and my feelings for sequels because I don't want to inadvertently give anything away about either this book or the first book, particularly because it's been a few months since we read the first book. But I really liked this. As always, Robin Hobb's character work is fantastic. I really enjoy the characters. Either I love them or I hate them. And I enjoy the fact that she is able to get that kind of a reaction from me in response to her characters. I enjoyed the plot, I enjoyed the mysteries, I figured some things out for myself before we got to the end, which was very, very exciting. I don't manage to do that very often, so I quite enjoyed that part of the process, and I'm really looking forward to reading the third and final book in this trilogy, which is The Ship of Destiny. Joanna and I are hopefully going to read that either in the month of March or very early in April, and I am excited and possibly nervous to see how Robin Hobb is going to conclude this particular trilogy. At the same time that I was reading this, I was also reading another big epic fantasy book, which I will come on to in a minute. So I needed something else that was quick and easy and fun. So I went with Even and Odd by Sarah Beth Durst, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I also really like Sarah Beth Durst. Again, you may know this, I've read quite a few of her books at this point. How many of her books have I read at this point? I've read the Queens of Renthia trilogy, I've read Fire and Heist, Race the Sands, Bonemakers, Spark, The Girl Who Could Not Dream, Even and Odd, and I'm forgetting something. Oh, the Deepest Blue. So I've read 10 of Sarah Beth Durst's books at this point. I'm not surprised by that. I really enjoy her books. This one, as you can probably tell from the cover, is a middle grade kind of portal fantasy. Again, I don't want to say too much because it's not very long, and also it's middle grade, but yeah, I'd say portal fantasy, magic, unicorns, clearly. Very fun, very whimsical, very easy to read, great audiobook. Thoroughly enjoyed myself. I also then read, again, something quite different for me, which was Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, and this one is also very short. I feel like I've spoken about this one in a video somewhere, but I can't remember where, so I'm just going to speak about it again. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. This one is kind of horror, but very light horror. Again, I'm a wimp, so it wasn't anything kind of majorly dark or scary in particular, but it is a vampire story. It follows Atul and Domingue. Atul is a vampire, Domingue is a human, and they kind of team up unexpectedly because Atul is on the run from some other vampires, and this is a version of our world where vampires exist, are known about, aren't particularly liked, but it's a fact of life that we deal with them. And this was fast-paced and interesting. I really enjoyed the characters. I found it interesting that even though I thought that this was a 2021 release, it actually is a re-release of a book that went out of print because it was printed originally or published originally by a small independent press, which unfortunately went out of business. I think it's the first time it's been printed in the UK, but it was originally published in 2017. I enjoyed myself with this. It's not my usual kind of thing, but I liked it, and I think if you like the sound of it, it's worth giving a go because it's not very long, and I enjoyed myself, and it's standalone, by the way. And I feel like my voice is really scratchy and annoying, so I'm going to go and get a drink, and I'll be right back. Okay, that's better. Let us continue. Okay, so the next book I finished was the other epic fantasy that I mentioned I was reading, which was The Magician by Raymond E. Feist. I don't have a copy of this with me because I actually fully annotated the copy that I was reading and sent it to my friend Jessie as a gift for her birthday. I've never annotated a book before, at least not since school, and even then I didn't really do it properly. So I've never annotated a book before, but it's one of her favourites and she's been on at me for years to read it, so I finally read it and I annotated it with all of my thoughts and feelings as I was reading the book and sent them to her. This is the first book in the Rift War world, universe, I don't really know what to call it, by Raymond D. Feist. There are a lot of books in this series, or whatever we want to call it. I don't know that I'll continue because I feel like Magician really stands nicely on its own, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It's very classic fantasy in style, which you may know I've been enjoying recently, and it follows really... It's difficult to describe it as following two characters because it's got that kind of epic fantasy feel to it, so it's multi-POV, but I suppose there are kind of two main characters and one main character called Pug, who becomes essentially a magician's apprentice. And I really don't want to say too much about it because it goes in so many directions. A lot of them I wasn't expecting at all. I will say that there's like a mini dragon that appears like in the first chapter, so I mean I was sold from that point on, to be honest with you. It's a very soft magic system. It is a very interesting and intricate world. The world building is great, the characters are really good. I struggled a little bit with the pacing in some places. Sometimes things seem to happen very quickly and other times things seem to happen really very slowly, so the pacing was a little bit off in places, but overall I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Again, not sure I'll continue with this series because I feel like I'm happy with where the characters have ended up, and I don't necessarily trust that that will remain the same because the series is so expansive. I'm guessing it's going to take place over a long period of time, if you know what I'm saying. So yeah, don't know about that. If I do, I will be taking Jessie's lead in where to go next in the series, but I did really enjoy myself. And by the way, in case you were wondering, she absolutely loved the annotated book that I sent her, so hooray, because I was a little bit worried that it was a bit of an odd choice for a birthday present, but all turned out okay in the end. The next thing I finished was The Girls Are Never Gone by Sarah Glenn Marsh, which is a YA paranormal thriller, ghost story, haunted house type thing, and I liked the creepy vibes. It did remind me in places of, what's it called, House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin Craig, is that right? So a little bit it reminded me of that. I can't say I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I didn't DNF it because I was interested enough in what was happening to want to continue and find out the answers to all of the questions, but it wasn't my favourite, and I feel like I would prefer this kind of story in an adult context rather than a YA context, because I've read a couple of books sort of in this line now that were YA. So the other one was Dark and Shallow Lies, and neither of them really hit very well for me. It just it wasn't quite edgy enough, I suppose. But then The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware was too much for me, so basically I don't know what I like in this genre, so I guess I'm just going to keep trying until I find it. But that's what this one was, and it was okay. It was fine. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. Next, I read Written in the Stars by Alexandra Bellefleur, because at this point I had read quite a lot of epic fantasy and I needed some light, fluffy romance. This is a fake dating trope. I didn't really love it. I read the whole thing because basically I couldn't decide what else I wanted to read, and I wanted to be reading something, but not something I was having to pay a lot of attention to or really was too bothered by. You know, sometimes you do just want a 3-star read. And I don't rate books, but this is probably what this one would have been, is like a mid-range, it was okay kind of book. And actually, there's nothing wrong with needing that sometimes. You know, sometimes you need a break from all of the intensity, and that's what this book was. So it was fine. I liked it fine. Was it amazing? No. Was I super invested in it? No. Do I mind that I read it? No. Then I read Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki, and this is a strange book, okay? I really enjoyed myself but it took me longer than it would usually take me to read a book of this length, and it's because this book needed time, because it's quite strange. So how do I even explain this book? So it's dual POV, really, and so we follow these two characters. Shizuka is a violin teacher. She used to be a violinist herself. She doesn't play anymore, but she teaches now. And she has this deal with a devil to deliver the souls of violin prodigies. And she has to deliver 7 of them. And she's delivered 6 already. And she's on the hunt for her 7th soul. And we also follow, actually it's 3 POVs. We also follow Katrina, who is a violinist, and she is a trans runaway. She's been horribly abused, and as a result of that she is really damaged and lacking in confidence, and of course her and Shizuka find each other, and Shizuka becomes her teacher, her mentor. And then the third POV, the reason we do get their POV, but they're not really kind of the main point of the stories. The main protagonists are Katrina and Shizuka, but we do also get the perspective of Elantris, who is an alien running a donut shop in America. And she becomes friends with Shizuka and Katrina. So it's a weird book, and there's a lot of exploration of interesting topics. There's a lot, not metaphor, because if it was too metaphorical I wouldn't have got on with it, but it feels metaphorical. I really don't understand how to explain this book. If the premise sounds interesting to you, I would say give it a go, because the character work is really good, the plot is really interesting, the idea behind the story is very different, and I enjoyed myself reading this. But it's not a binge read, and it's strange, and you kind of don't really, it's not that you don't know what's going on, because it's not the kind of story that is very cryptic. It's very clear what's going on in the story. It's not confusing. But I didn't know what was going on with my feelings for the story, because it's just not the kind of thing I would normally like, because it's so weird. But it's not absurdist, which I wouldn't have liked it if it was absurdist, but it's like absurdist without being written in an absurdist style. I don't know how to explain it. I really liked this book. Just, if it sounds interesting to you, give it a try. I reckon you know pretty quickly if you're gonna get on with it or not, but give it time. It's not a binge type of book, which is a thing that I do, you may know. Anyway, so I read that, and then because that book was quite strange, I then wanted to read something familiar and comforting and easy, and so I read Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, again, for the 3rd time in my life. And I loved it. I was part of a whole live show on Sam from Griff Reads channel, so I'm not going to talk about this massively here or now, but I liked this a lot the first time I read it. I liked it a lot more the second time I read it, and I liked it a lot more again this 3rd time I read it. There we go. So then I was feeling still a little bit into that light sci-fi slice of life type thing. So I read The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers, which I had been planning to save until the paperback came out, but then I didn't. I borrowed the audio from my library and I read it and I loved it and it was great. So if you haven't heard of the Wayfarers series, I thought it was a trilogy, but it's not, it's a series. Exciting. This is the 4th book. It's exactly what I just said. It's sci-fi but slice of life. It's not really focused on the science fiction elements, it's focused on characters in space settings. And they're companion books, so they don't follow the same people, but there are sort of common characters amongst the books. So for example, one of the characters in The Galaxy and the Ground Within is named Pei, and she does show up in some of the other books, but she wasn't a main character in any of the other books, but she is in this one. And basically our characters all get stuck on this planet together at this retreat type place whilst there's some sort of space related problem happening, and they're all very different from each other, and they have to come together and learn to be with each other. And that's basically what all of these books are like, and I love them. I love them so much. I love the characters, and they're so wholesome, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And I wanted to continue riding that good feeling train, so I reread Elantris by Brandon Sanderson for also the third time in my life, and guess what? I loved it. This book does not get nearly enough love. It gets a really bad rap. Yes, it was his debut, technically, but I think it was still like the 13th book that he'd written. And it's fantastic. And yes, okay, it's a bit slower, it's a bit more political, it's a little less action heavy, it's a little less magic heavy, and it's a little less world building heavy, I guess. But it's still got great characters, it's still got an intricate plot, it's still got mysteries and things to surprise you, and we're going to be doing a live show for this on Sam's channel. I'm not sure when yet, but keep an eye out for it. I loved it. I love Raoden, I love Serene, and more people need to give this book a bit of a break because it's really great. And technically I finished it on the 1st of March, but I literally had 45 minutes of the audiobook left to finish on the 1st of March, so I just counted it as a February read because it would feel weird to read a book of this size and have just like 50 pages that I read in March and count it as a March read rather than a February read. It's a February read. So those are the books that I read. I haven't done my stats yet, so let's do them together now. This video is really long. What's new? So number of books that I read was 11. Number of pages. Number of pages. How many pages? According to the story graph, it was 5,275 pages. So about 1,000 pages less than in January, but that's okay. Number of BIPOC books, probably not enough, but let's see. I Love You So Mochi, Certain Dark Things, Written in the Stars, I think, Light from Uncommon Stars, and that's it, 4. So not very good there. Number of hauled books, oh gosh, I don't know. I was supposed to count those, wasn't I? And I haven't. But I have done a haul already, so I will put a number on screen for you. DNFs 1, actually. I DNF'd Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. So this book is like a love letter to slasher films, and I don't watch slasher films because I'm a wimp, again, and I don't watch any kind of horror film because I don't like the experience of feeling that stressed out. So I didn't get a lot of the pop culture references, and it was just a little bit too wild for me. It was very extra. I got about 50% of the way through this one and I just couldn't do it anymore. It was just, it was the point that I just didn't actually care how the book ended anymore. It was too much. So I did look up spoilers for the ending, and I'm I was very sure that I didn't want to finish that book. So I did not. I moved on with my life and did not finish that one. Books from my top 22. The Galaxy and the Ground Within was one. Certain Dark Things was another. Magician was another. Even and Odd was one. Mad Ship was also one. So how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5. I read 5 books from my top 22 for 2022 list, which leaves me with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books left on this top 22, of which 2 are not actually out in the world yet. So I've only got 6 of those that I can currently read. I think I'm going to do a pile of possibility video. Maybe I'm going to film that now, I'm not sure. Anyway, that was my reading for February. This video was unnecessarily long. I have blathered at you for more than long enough. So if you're still here, thank you. I appreciate you. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks.